One of the perennial questions for startups, for entrepreneurs, for investors is, we've gotten to a good product market fit. How do we unlock growth, and how do we get to the next phase? And this is what our next panel exactly is going to be diving right into. And so I would like to introduce our next, the moderator for our next panel, Farzad Tari, who's a VP at Imperva, and to bring up all the panelists for the go-to-market strategies in cybersecurity.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Farzad Tari. I'm the VP of Business Development at Imperva. I've been in the cybersecurity space for a couple of decades. We have an outstanding panel here today talking about go-to-market strategies, fundraising, IPOs, acquisitions for cybersecurity startups. This panel has been there, done that many times, so it should be a great session. Unfortunately, Rehan was not able to join us today. He had a foot injury, so unfortunately we were not able to have him in the panel today. Now, we have short time, so I'm gonna get things started. Let's start with some introductions from the group. Maybe every panelist can, briefly introduce yourself, and also mention one game-changing go-to-market activity for your companies. You're all sort of entrepreneurs and leaders in the space, so yeah, maybe just an introduction and an example of something that's been very helpful to your startups. Yeah.
I'll jump in first. Okay, hi, I'm Ray Kruck. I'm the CEO of Tugboat Logic, serial entrepreneur, and been in the tech industry for over 25 years, and particularly in cybersecurity. One of the things that I did early on with our last company, Tugboat Logic, in order to get market traction going, customer traction going, was we were in the compliance and security space for small and medium-sized businesses that couldn't afford or didn't have a CISO on staff. So we were that virtual CISO for them. So in order to encourage content to come into our platform, our SaaS-based platform, in order to get that content in, policies, controls, things that they were doing in their organization, we encouraged them to upload it, and in exchange we validated whether those policies or controls or evidence that they gathered for those controls were adequate and were validated against kind of industry standards. So it was kind of a way for us to get traction going very quickly and build trust in a more consultative selling approach, and so we'll talk offline maybe another time about whether I like freemium models or paid for service models, but it was a quick and easy way for us in the early days of the company to get customer trust going in a more consultative approach.
Hi, I'm Rick Caccia. I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing at Palo Alto Networks for Cortex and Unit 42 divisions. Palo's been around for 17 years, so I'm not going to talk about, I wasn't there when it started, so I'm not going to talk about that. Instead, for a go-to-market kind of hack, I think I'll talk about one I did at one of the other early stage companies I was at, Exabeam. And one thing I think we did really interesting with Exabeam, one of the early user behavior analytics companies, was rather than try and go after the whole market, we launched the company as a helper product on top of a bigger market, sort of a helper product on SIM, and it did some really interesting things for us. Instead of trying to find every possible company that might need this technology, we narrowed it way down to Splunk customers who might need this technology, which may not sound like a big deal, but it cuts your target market massively and makes it much easier to find prospects, and it got us to our first paid 100 enterprise customers much faster than I think we would have otherwise. So I think that notion of when I'm launching an early stage company, rather than try and sort of boil the ocean right away, can I find a way to launch it as a helper on a bigger market and use that to sort of tune down and find the attach rate and get there much faster.
Cool. I'm Sourabh Satish, CTO and co-founder for Pangea, which is a category-defining security platform as a service offering. Prior to that, I was CTO and co-founder for Phantom, which was a SOAR offering. I've not one but two examples. In case of Phantom, when we started, we took an early advice and acted on it, where we launched an offering as a platform, not as a product. And that really appealed to the security audience because it speaks to the flexibility and ability to adapt the technology to your need rather than pitching it as a product which seems very inflexible and rigid. And in case of Pangea, we are very early, literally 18 months into the company. And one thing that we have focused on a lot is around security and compliance. We are already SOC 2 compliant, and we are working on ISO 27001 and HIPAA compliant. And it helps reduce the friction to sell your product, because you want to launch your security product with enough trust built into your offering so that they can count on using your product and services. And that really is showing as we are growing our company and customer base.
Thank you, Sourabh. The next question I have is, when you're starting a company, when you're starting a brand new company, one of the questions you have to answer after your product is ready and you're launching it is, how are you going to sell this product? Are you going to hire direct salespeople? Are you going to use channel partners? You have these CSPs, the Amazons of the world that are popping up. What's the right strategy for a company? Obviously, direct sales is expensive, but is effective. Getting attention from channel partners, especially when you're in early stages, is difficult. You have to almost feed the channel to get them interested. And then you have these CSPs where you can just, place your product on a marketplace. Is that the right strategy? So I'm curious about your thoughts. Who wants to lead us? Yeah.
I can start.
Yeah.
In a startup, everybody is a sales guy. Everybody should be selling all the time. Who better than yourself can pitch the product and convey the value proposition? So I think channels are a mean to augment the sales motion, not the way to launch the company. And direct sales is probably the better way to go. Find a few design partners, make them wildly successful, make them the champions of our products, and then augment channel sales. CSP marketplaces like Amazon Marketplace and GCP. These are all means to accelerate or get more sales, not something to bet your success on. That's my experience been.
I'll say two things. So having been in 8 venture-backed startups in 30 years, this is a big question of how you're going to launch it. Two things. One of the best CROs I've ever worked with said to me, if we can't figure out how to sell the product on our own, why would we expect our channel to figure out how to sell it for us? And that's always stuck with me. I think in the early days, it's really hard to sell product. You're not sure what it does in the market and so forth. And you have to do the hard work of figuring it out yourself. When it's bigger and later, the channel partners love to help you sell it. In the early days, you have to do it. And the second thing is, having been at Google Cloud previously, I will tell you, if you think the CSPs are going to do it for you, it's not going to happen. The CSP reps, I'll just use Google as an example, the reps sell their own products, not yours as a partner, and the marketplace really is like a way to transfer paper easier. The marketplace doesn't sell anything for you. So I think it all boils down to you need to sell it yourself. Once you're good at it, partners can give you reach and leverage, and the CSPs can give you kind of transactional ease, but they're probably not going to do much more than that.
I was just going to add one thing, though. When my product sold to the SMB market, right? So you're talking about smaller companies, typically with less than 10 employees, maybe 20 employees, maybe 1 employee. The CSPs do play a valuable role. I agree with everything you're saying. However, I would say when you're selling to a small market, Amazon as a presence in the market and platforms like those CSPs are hugely influential, right? They are a transaction marketplace, but they are actually hugely hugely influential with their reviews, where you stack rank in a whole category full of other vendors. I've spent a lot of money and a lot of time through PR, through marketing, to get high rankings at least on those marketplaces, because I know the junior IT person or whoever was tasked with dealing with compliance and security at a company was typically their 8th or 10th job. They just want to go online, they'll Google search, okay, well, Amazon says this vendor in this category of solutions is number 2 or 3 or 4, right? So they got to be decent enough to get there, so then they have some good user reviews. So driving a sense of momentum in those CSP platforms to raise your profile of your product is super important, especially if you're going after an SMB marketplace.
Yeah, exactly. So it depends a lot on the market segment you're going after and the maturity of your product. Next question. A lot of cybersecurity companies, when you think about, exits, right? Investors and entrepreneurs build companies. Eventually, they're expecting to get some kind of exits. Many exits, as you probably know, happen through M&A versus IPOs. I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have been in 2 IPOs and a few M&A transactions, but majority of exits in cybersecurity happen through M&A. So I guess the question is, as an entrepreneur, what you guys have built, a few companies in your careers, how do you think about that? When you're building the company, do you also think about getting an exit, or are you focused on the day-to-day activities of building and growing your company? How should entrepreneurs think about that?
I think I would advise against anybody planning for a company with an exit strategy of an acquisition, because it's going to be a very frustrating experience. You don't control the macroeconomics. Your acquirer could build or buy a similar capability and your dreams could be shattered. They could change their strategy and choose to diversify rather than continue to invest in the same domain and augment their existing products with your product as a mere feature on their existing offering, and so on and so forth. So I think focus on building great value, deliver great value to the customers, win happy customers, and have a sound business model. Then you can sustain any headwind, and you can choose how you want to grow the company and take your company, whether it is an exit strategy via acquisition or an IPO. I think a good product or a good business model is going to be lucrative in any of those situations, and would not put you under any kind of pressure to be eager about an exit strategy, because that you can't control.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A great business is always attractive for some next step, whether that's getting another investment round, an M&A opportunity, or an IPO. You have to wake up every day thinking about building a great business. I think I would just add to that, what I've done in my last 2 startups, I've woken up every day focused on the business. You can't do anything else. You focus on your product and your customers and your market. However, I think you have to, as a founder and a CEO, think about exit optionality. You have to build in exit optionality. I think I want to claim that I coined that phrase, but I hear VCs now playing that back to me. But I think you have to have options, right? So part of those options, some of the little tactics you can do to build in that optionality are the following. Number 1, keep your cap table simple and clean. That means your rounds are kind of organized, your investment rounds are organized. They're not all different kinds of investment vehicles and folks, because by the time you get later in your journey, the company could look really messy from a cap table point of view, with overlapping or contracting or conflicting valuation and various voting rights. Number 2, I think keep focusing on product market fit and market momentum, right? You want to be perceived as your company grows by your investment community as this company is leading this segment. Whatever it is you're doing as a company, be really good at it and be known to be good at it, which involves PR and talking about your company in investor circles. I think the third is, size your investment round to what you actually need for the business, not what the VC model model will dictate to you, oh, Series A must be this amount of money, Series B must be this amount of money, and the valuations all land in this area. Well, if you don't need $20 million in an investment round, you only need $2 million, for example, then just take $2 million and figure out a bridge or some easier way to get the 2 or 3 or some smaller amount of money in millions than a large round. Keep your company leverage as clean as you possibly can. Obviously, hold on to your rights as a founder as long as you reasonably can. I think the final piece is what I did with my last 2 companies is I checked in with my co-founder, and I basically, whether it was quarterly or sometimes it was monthly or annually, I would check in and say, hey, if we were to sell, if someone came along with a check tomorrow morning, what do we think we'd be worth, and why? Most importantly, why? What would you be ready to sell the company for? What number? Just say a number. This is just a theory. So you want to practice kind of aligning expectations with your founding team. If you're the sole founder, okay, you have a conversation with yourself or your spouse or significant other. But if you have founders, you want to be checking in and saying, hey, we just saw our competitor just got acquired for X dollars. Do we think that was crazy or reasonable or way out of whack? What do we think about our company? And I think because there will come a time where you will get offered many times. If you're a successful and growing company, you will get that question asked. Someone will approach, and they'll likely say a number or offer a number that'll be less than you expect, or it could be way less than you expect. And so it's good at that moment not to be thinking about this for the first time, but this is now maybe the 10th time you've thought about it, and you might be better prepared to deal with that situation, decide, no, that's crazy, I'm going to move on, or, well, let's pause and actually take that seriously because we see these other market conditions maybe not being so great for us in the future. I know Farzad's seen it too. I can't tell you the number of companies, I'm sure all of us have seen it, who turned down fantastic valuations and offers and said, oh, why would we sell now? The business is growing 300% year over year. Okay, we started at 0 and we're growing 300% per year, but I can tell you that curve gets very steep as you keep taking on more funding rounds. And they turn down great money at some point in their journey and only to maybe hit a wall and stall out and then go, God, why didn't we take that money a year ago or 5 years ago? So I just believe you ought to always have a number in your head as a founder all throughout your journey. And when the time comes that you do get lucky enough to get asked about an M&A or some other form of exit, even for a secondary round where you're asked to take some money out of the company, or you want to take money out of the company in an investment round on a secondary, you should have that valuation number in your head.
That's great. And just to add maybe one thing to what Ray said about creating that optionality, one method of creating the optionality, in addition to keeping the company cap table clean and make sure you're not overcapitalized, is building relationships with potential acquirers as you're building the company. Having a relationship with a potential acquirer essentially de-risk any potential future M&A transaction with that acquirer. And they also get to know the team along the way. So that's something to sort of invest on, in my view.
I would just re-emphasize the cleanliness of the cap table, because I've been on both the acquired side and acquiring side, and a screwed up cap table with various kinds of terms and conditions from, this is Silicon Valley. You'll get money if your idea is sound from anybody and everybody, should you take it. And what are they going to do to your company? How are they going to help you grow the business? Those are the questions you need to ask, not because somebody is coming around with a check and you just say, hey, I need the money, let's take it. Getting good advisors, good investors who are going to help the cause of the company, understand your business, understand your challenges. Super important things when you're forming a company and thinking about where to go with it.
One rogue investor could kill your deal.
Exactly.
One rogue investor, or one bad term sheet for an investor's rights could kill your deal.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So just being conscious of time, maybe we ask one more question from the panel. We're obviously in challenging economic times, right? There's a little bit of a slowness in the company. So when you think about go-to-market, there are some go-to-market activities that are very expensive. There's some that are more capital efficient. So given today's market condition, maybe as a closing remark, if the panel can contribute their views on what would be good, what would be some good go-to-market strategies for entrepreneurs and folks to consider. Yeah.
I'll start. So I think it varies on the size of the company. If you're heading into a storm and you're a big company, you run the consolidation playbook. You say, hey, why buy 5-point products? I can sell you this one thing and take 2 or 3 of those out and get your price down. I know most big companies have done it and they're going to do it in the months ahead. And if you're a small company, you can't play
So
that
this is a bundle?
What?
The concept of a bundle?
Well, consolidation, right?
Yeah.
When times are good, companies, certainly in enterprise security, they buy lots of point products. When times are bad, they say, why do I have 50 or 60 products? And how do I consolidate? And if you're a vendor who's got the breadth, you go in and you do that consolidation.
Consolidation, okay.
That might not be, I don't know what percentage of companies in this room are that way. If you're a small company, you can't play that game. So you want to make sure, what I would do is make sure I don't lose the customers I have. I would double down in tough times on locking down early renewals and longer contracts for subscriptions to lock them down. I would try and do cross-sell and upsell in a way maybe I don't normally do. And I try and lock down the budget the customer has for my vendor, for my company, and try and get a little bit more out of them and make sure I don't get knocked out because somebody else, maybe a big company, is trying to knock me out of there. So I try to make sure I'm doing everything I can to not get chunked out of that company.
I'll just add to it. Our solution was a SaaS-based solution, so we focused on when we were launching our product when COVID hit, and we were doing the collective sphincter exercise, thinking, "Oh my God, what's going to happen to our business?" Luckily, it took off, but the early days of that were focused on UX, right? So, as a software as a service product, user experience, user interface, obviously, is a big investment area on the product side, and bring customers, whether you have a few customers early on, or you're at a stage now where you've got many customers, bring them into your roadmap, be clear with them exactly what vision you have for the company, but double down on product and product value for the customer to lock them in with the same goal that Rick just mentioned, is to lock them in because definitely other vendors are going to come and try to knock you out. And if you've got not only if the customer sees you're investing in their solution that they're using every day, and you're doubling down and tripling down on that, and your company cares and focuses on product, customer feels that value, will likely to renew much more so than if it was just about price alone.
And you can definitely use the customer's voice to your advantage, because customers will listen to what other customers have to say rather than you telling what the value proposition is. So few happy customers, make them wildly successful, leverage their voice to highlight the value proposition, what they gained out of using your product, what were their wins and success, and that has a much longer lasting impact on potential new customers and evaluations that they're doing, rather than just putting out marketing material saying we are the best. That doesn't really work.
Excellent. So we're at time. I don't know whether there are any questions. It looks like there's some questions in the audience. Yeah.
Hello, good afternoon. So just want to have one question about when you guys discussed that going to marketplace becomes a long cycle. We tried that with NVIDIA and it's still going on. Channel partners initially are not motivated. And as Sourabh said that, everyone at a startup, everyone has to do that sales role. But probably at some point it becomes a bandwidth issue. And otherwise, if you kind of expand a team, then it doesn't become cost effective initially. So is it a good strategy to kind of go after people who do fractional, in the role of a fractional sales manager? Is that a good strategy?
Thank you. The way we kind of did it, we kind of started engaging with the channel after we had a few wins. And even when we recruited a few channels, I was, bandwidth should not be a question in a startup. You're working 24/7. But basically, you ought to ask the channel partner to pitch the product back to you until they get the pitch right. Don't unleash them on customers. And that strategy, when we started onboarding channels, we spent a lot of time in making sure that they are able to convince me to sell my product to me, right? And unless I'm convinced, I'm not letting them talk to anybody. And I used to do that with every salesperson in my company as well. Is like the 1 week after hire, 1 week they go, learn about the product, and they can practice a pitch back to me, over and over again until I feel convinced that they're ready to go out. I won't let them talk to the customer. And that kind of, both of those strategies, helped us a lot.
So after saying channel won't do it for you, I'll contradict myself a little bit and say there are cases where it works.
Yeah, it works.
And there are channel partners, resellers, who just sort of, in their DNA, gravitate towards earlier markets and take more of a risk. I will combine that with the way I started this by saying, if you're able to start as like a helper, like we did this at Exabeam, I did 2 startups in a row over an 8-year period, and the first one we tried our own brand new market. Even the early stage channel guys tried but couldn't, they didn't know what to do with it. Exabeam was different. We went in and said, we found all the Splunk resellers, and we said, we've got this add-on pack, $100K deal per year, and it was easy for them to pick it up and do it. But we also constructed the company such that it was 100% channel, they got paid on every deal. So you can make it work if you sort of construct all the pieces for that. If you don't, it's a lot harder. It's just much harder. And I don't think bringing in I'll just leave it at that. It's much harder.
I used a lot of managed service providers as a small startup, even though I only had like 10 customers and I couldn't prove market traction to channel partners. What I did was I said, in exchange for, like Sourabh said, exchange for getting good at my product, like pitching it, understanding the value prop, and testing them on that. After they completed that, the little carrot I had was I said, I'll give you 10K a year. And some I gave 20K a year to go out and actually do marketing of my product. I'd fund their marketing. And the way that worked was it solved the problem you were saying. I find I'd rather pay 10 channel partners, $20K a year, which would be the cost of a starting salary of a junior sales manager. It does help. It does work if you do it right.
Hi, this is Trupti. I have a question for Ray. I'm a cybersecurity professional and aspiring entrepreneur. I'm very aware of rogue access control points or rogue router. I would like to know from Ray, what's a rogue investor and how to protect cap table?
Yeah, well, maybe Farzad should ask. You want to refer to it? So, well, rogue investor. I mean, how do you watch for a rogue investor? I think Farzad would agree. Just watch. Verify the reputation of investors that you come in contact with. So everyone will approach you. Go back to hopefully a trusted investor that you've already got part of your group, your posse, your company, and to say, hey, I met so-and-so yesterday. Do you know anything about him or her? And they'll say, oh yeah, I know. This guy has, or this lady has a massively terrible reputation for doing X, Y, and Z. Or no, this person's great. They've been in this company. So validation with your existing advisors. If it's the very first advisor, the very first investor you meet, don't take any money from them until you can do pattern matching. Right? Just wait.
Do reference checks on them as well.
Reference checks.
It goes both ways.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. We're out of time for this session, so big hand for Farzad and the team here. Thank you.